not just one of the family of nations. This is a nation with a great mission to perform for the benefit of liberty-loving people everywhere.
That we shall be as a city upon a hill.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country.
You've come to fight as free men. Free men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land.
In one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. You gotta fight for your right. Can you dig it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News. My name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson sitting beside me there. It is a Friday morning, start of your Memorial Day weekend. Hey, if you're driving around right now, I don't know, maybe you got us blasting on the Bluetooth in your car or something like that. Maybe you're going back home to visit some family. Just stay safe over the weekend. All right, stay safe if you're getting out there driving around. We're in the middle of a reopening phase right now. Stuff is popping off. It's going big. I understand. It's a big show on Friday. We have a fantastic new little development in the program we're going to be introducing today. You can see that in the show notes, by the way, just one step down. Show notes at the top of the description of this video on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you so happen to be watching. realnewsradio.live. Realnewsradio.live is the best way to find everything Real News related content. Real News Radio is the tag you're going to use for all of our stuff there. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, doesn't matter. Find us under that. Evernote link right there. That's where you follow the show notes. Again, my name is Mr. Henry. Before we do the greatest audience in the nation appreciation, and before we let them know what the new wrinkle in the show is for a Friday, David Shine Thompson, buddy, how you doing this morning, man? Everything good out your way?
Man, I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. I'm as soon as this show gets over, you can hear how echoey it is in my room right now. It's because there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing in here but the Real News studio. The Real News studio is the only thing in my room right now. And as soon as the show gets over, I'm putting all this stuff in boxes, and I'm taking the Real News studio to its new home just down the road, and in my new home. And I'm really excited about it. So that's what my Memorial Day weekend is going to be all about. I'm hopefully going to find some time for some, chicken and burgers and doing the whole Memorial Day thing at some point. And I hope all of you get to do that as well. Hopefully, this is a good weekend to throw everything you've been doing for the past 3 months, in the trash and, hang out with people and, do the Memorial Day thing, So I encourage people to do that. Get out in the sun. Vitamin D is good for you. That's that way I can sound like I'm being responsible by telling you to get out and have a good time.
No, absolutely, man. Get out there out in the sun. Hey, shout out to everybody that's joining us in Facebook chat right now. Greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment here. The audience, by the way, is already going off about one of the headlines that's in there, and I'm going to get to that in about 5 to 10 minutes here. I promise you. It's going to be the major portion of the show. It's probably going to take up the new wrinkle of the show. That headline being, did Biden commit an impeachable offense? They're already going off in the comment section. I'm going to save a little bit of that, though, because the final half hour of this program today, I'm going to let y'all know already. Open Lines Friday. We're the first and only crew to ever use that term. Nobody else has ever done this before. But if you look in the show notes, there is actually a number you can call. This is the cool little wrinkle I was talking about before. Number you can call to get on live with myself and Shine. Give us your opinion. Any topic's fair game, man. Now, look, towards the end of the program here, we're going to be talking about this new audio tape that came out of Joe Biden and Mr. Henry's assessment that was essentially the exact same scenario, if not slightly worse, than what Donald Trump was just impeached for a little while ago. Now, Daniel Snowden on Facebook kind of hits it on the head and said, yeah, but so what? He was VP then. He's not VP now. That's kind of after the fact. Statutory limitations, I don't even know if that's a thing that would apply here. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter. I get it. Save your thoughts on that for a little bit, though. Here's the call-in number, 615-807-0619. Random number, it's Google Voice. They gave it to me. What do you want me to do? It's at the top of the show notes, though, 615-807-0619. Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, buddy. It's there's the number 615-807-0619. I'm saying it one more time as I'm typing it into the show notes for David to put out there. That's super cool of me, man. No problem. No, that's super cool, man. And actually, Sean, I'll tell you what, man, I'm not sure if you even want to pull up this Governor Lee clip or not for the first story. It probably doesn't even necessarily matter. I could probably just let the people know what's going on if we want to lend some context to it. Yeah, go ahead and get that ready if you want to. But greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment. That basically is what we just did. That's the new segment, the new wrinkle. Call that number about the half-hour mark. Let us know what's on your mind. Any topics are open. Hey, man, it's Friday. Shannon and I don't have a lot left to do work-wise. So we'll go a little bit longer for if you want to also. But here's what we're getting into today. Let's start with this, all right? First headline today you see there. Yeah, man, 50 people, up to 50 people now apparently can start meeting if they want to. This is Governor Lee yesterday indicating he will sign an executive order to allow, pause there for a minute, to allow people to gather in groups of 50, up from 10 previously. All right, now let me pause here for a second. Mr. Henry, why did you pause when you said to allow? I don't know, man. That seems to be the operative term that everybody's focusing on in these style of headlines. It's WATE headline that we're coming from here. And the allow portion is like, well, what do you mean? I need allowance from the governor. I need allowance from the state of Tennessee all of a sudden now to start meeting in groups of 50. Apparently, I mean, yeah, that's where we are now, I guess. Right. And that's what gets people this sort of unnerving feeling. And I'm not blaming this in WATE necessarily. I'm just saying, like, that's the state of where we are right now. And Sean, actually, whenever, if you want to let me know, we actually, if that clip, the video link at the top of that story right there, you're probably going to have to get through an ad or something. And I apologize, Real News audience. And it's the only version of that video I had. Oh, well, then no worries, man. Honestly, it doesn't even matter. I could tell them. Oh, okay. It doesn't necessarily matter. But here's what Governor Lee basically said. He announced on Thursday that he will be signing an executive order that will allow groups of 50 people to gather at a time. The previous order stated that only groups of 10 people can gather at a time. Now, Governor Lee said in part, quote, this executive order allows groups of up to 50 people to participate in social or recreational activities of groups to 10 to 50 people. Now, 50 might seem like an arbitrary number to you, and quite possibly it is. I don't know. But it's interesting to couple some of this data that we have now of the state of Tennessee, of Governor Lee allowing groups of 50 or more to meet with what we found yesterday. And what we found yesterday was that Fox News, and now every other subsequent media source that I've found, but yesterday Fox News started to report that there's new CDC guidelines indicating that, all right, it may not be that coronavirus lives on surfaces for more than, I don't know, a little while. I mean, the initial indication we were receiving was that coronavirus was living on these surfaces for a day, 2, 3, sometimes as long as a week. I mean, goodness gracious, I saw a few reports out there. I don't know how validated they were or source back they were, but you're talking a couple weeks that the coronavirus is living on some of these surfaces. People were losing their minds over this stuff, man. And now we saw another report come out finally yesterday that was indicating, okay, well, man, and the Ben Shapiro reported on this yesterday, saying that the CDC is also now indicating that it's actually highly unlikely that you'll actually pick up this virus if you just so happen to waltz through a room where someone had it. Or even if you're around someone for a shortened period of time. If someone sneezes in a room and you just so happen to sort of walk through that room, it's still a very low likelihood that you'll pick it up. Or so the CDC is saying. What they're indicating now is that the data is starting to reveal that it's looking like prolonged exposure over long periods of time. We're talking days or weeks on end. That is the thing that is most likely, obviously, to lead to exposure and then therefore leading to you becoming susceptible to this virus and actually coming down with it. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because you heard me kind of rant and rave yesterday, and I'm only going to go on this for about 2 more minutes, man. So I don't want to belabor this too much, but it leads into our next story. You heard me rant and rave yesterday a little bit about Governor Cuomo in New York, sort of arbitrarily, if you will, singling out churches and saying, we're going to let churches open back up again. And the comment sections we picked up from YouTube was just excoriating this guy for it, right? Like, how can you single out churches when you're letting 100 people in to Home Depot on any given occasion? Well, some of the data they're getting back now, and I'm trying to be as beholden to this data as possible, is saying that it is those prolonged exposures coupled with what goes on at church that could lead to some more exposure. Now, again, look, you know how Mr. Henry feels about this. I hate speaking in the third person, but you know how I feel about this First Amendment thing. Let me know how you think about this in Facebook as well, the YouTube comment section. Where I'm leading with this is some of the indication that I've been receiving from the data is there's a reason possibly by way of data why they're singling out live music, why they're singling out church services, because the act of singing to some people here, you're expressing, right? I don't know, the way that this transmits is through saliva or through mucus. I don't pretend to understand. I'm not a scientist, but this is what I've been reading. And the data that I've been receiving is prolonged exposure, sitting next to each other while that stuff is going on. So you have a choir of people in front of you. You then sit in a pew with this stuff floating around for an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes up to 2 hours right after that's happened. That's the scenario that I've been reading up on as to why churches are being singled out as opposed to other things. Now, granted, why that narrative never came out, I don't know. I have no idea. Because frankly speaking, that seems to be a much better coverage for media than trying to single out churches to force some weird First Amendment argument. I don't get it, bro. But it does go into this next story about live music possibly being the last thing we see to come back. And in the Nashville area, and try and interrupt me here whenever you need to, man, because I know this is a big issue for you. In the Nashville area, live music returning to Nashville is probably going to be one of the last things. Starting Monday, this is why we're getting into this. Starting on Monday, a phase 2 of Metro's roadmap for reopening Nashville is going to be introduced. Now, live music can return to some stages in Music City, but they say don't go adding up your earplugs to your grocery cart just yet. You'll still have to wait quite a while to see an actual show in a club. And again, I presume it's for the same reasons we just spoke about. Yeah, okay, fine. It's not going to be existing on surfaces all that long. We have that data now, but the data does look like it indicates the more you sing, the more you express, the more you have this transmission floating around in the air. I don't know, man. I don't pretend to understand it, but that's the same data they're getting. They go on to say there's an important distinction to look for in the guidelines. Phase 2 permits restaurants and bars that serve food in an area away from the bar. Don't quite understand that, but whatever. The bars that serve food in an area away from the bar to be open at 75% capacity. And that's an increase from 50% capacity to where we are currently. This phase 2 will increase that to 75%, right? And have up to 2 musicians performing. 2. And at first, dude, I actually thought this was just like 2 musical acts performing, because I don't know, outside of like some DJ sets, possibly, I cannot think of another 2-version musician act, at least in Nashville in the traditional sense. Like I've heard of trios. I get a trio, okay, but I don't know of a 2-person act.
I don't know if you could call it a band at that point. It would just be like a singer-songwriter or something. It's not really a real band performance if 2 people are doing it. It's like a duo or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe you could do some karaoke stuff, whatever. It's neither here nor there, I guess, because I don't know what you can do with 2 musicians. Like I just said, I'll put it this way: UT did have Vanilla Ice come play one time my freshman year, and that was a 2-person act. It was Vanilla Ice as the DJ and a drummer. It was the most absurd thing I've ever seen. So maybe you get Vanilla Ice to come play. I don't know. Going on, though. So you can have 2 musicians performing at one time, so long as there is social distancing that takes place. But the bar areas and dance floors must remain closed. Music venues and bars without dining areas fall under this separate designation of socially driven businesses, which are not allowed to reopen until phase 3. So phase 2 does not cover your normal music venues. Which, look, Knoxville is becoming a slight little microcosm of the Nashville scene. And Sean, I'll kick it to you a little bit just to explain to people possibly what the scene might look like here or why that might be such a big thing. But unless I'm wrong, the Knoxville music scene was kind of a bit of an up-and-coming thing for a while, bro. Like, we had the Big Ears Festival here, man. Like, my brother would come down from the Virginia area every single year just to attend that Big Ears Festival, man. There's some music venues around here. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Well, and we had Daniel just to relate to the story, we had Daniel in here say 2 chicks with guitars, etc. I like coffee shop shows. I bet you do when it's 2 chicks with guitars, Daniel. I bet you're all ready for that. And yes, that is a way to do music, but that's not the kind of thing you mentioned the coffee shop. That's the kind of thing 30 people listen to, not 300. 300 or 3,000 people don't listen to 2 girls sitting playing a guitar. We need bands. We need music. We need experiences. We need people to make $20,000 on alcohol sales and $15,000 on food sales and $10,000 on ticket sales, and then paying all the people that were part of that process, because those people are part of the economy too. And those people haven't been able to make any money since March. And we need to let them do that. And they're not going to make any money with 2 girls and guitars and selling coffee. And you get what I'm saying. I don't want to say necessarily, I don't know. I don't have enough experience to say whether or not Knoxville's music scene is like so much better or worse than other places. But I do know that I love the music scene in Knoxville.
Right.
I love it. And I love our musicians. It's most of the people are people not trying to make it. They're not trying to be famous. They just like do their life and do some music. And it's really nice. And there's lots of other people who depend on that music and that culture to live and pay their bills. And a lot of those people are my friends. I think some of those people, they may not be the most powerful people in the Knoxville area, but they are some of the most interesting people in the Knoxville area. And I'd really like to see them get back to a semblance of normalcy. It might take them years to build it back up again to what it was, but I'd like them to get the opportunity to start.
Well, quick straw poll for the Real News audience as well. Watching on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you need to be. Real News Radio. Real News Radio is where you're going to find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff. Here's the quick poll, okay? At the bottom of this story in the show notes, you'll see a bunch of links. And I'm not necessarily advocating that you go support these links. It's not my wheelhouse. Frankly, I used to be a musician. I get it. But if you want to support some of these musicians, there are clearly ways you can do that, like Shine was just mentioning. There's nonprofit efforts like the Music Cares COVID-19 Relief Fund. You can also donate directly to these musicians through their GoFundMe campaigns. A lot of linked right there in the show notes as well. A lot of venues have also joined this thing called the National Independent Venue Foundation, goals of which include lobbying Congress for federal aid. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on that you could contribute to voluntarily. So here's the poll for the Real News audience as we transition into this next national story. The Trump, I'll be Shine, if you want to pull up that Trump clip here in just a second. Yeah. Here's the poll. Would you rather possibly open up these music venues to what some in the medical community or science community or whatever community might say could be potentially too early? And I'm talking like forcing phase 3 whenever before it. And no one knows what phase 3 is supposed to be yet. Let me be clear about that. That's another part of this story. No one understands yet of what the phase 3 reintroduction is supposed to be in Tennessee. We don't have intimate details of that yet. But if we
hopefully it's a non-phase phase. Hopefully it's like phase nothing. Everything open. Bye.
Right. Should we reintroduce that a little bit too early? Would you rather have that be reintroduced a little bit too early and not possibly risk contamination of someone else? And contamination is probably nothing, but spreading this virus to someone else, a possible surge again, an uptick in the curve that we have to stamp back down, possibly overwhelming hospitals again. I don't know. Do you want to deal with that all again? Is that a possibility? Or would you rather just, support through some of these GoFundMe things? Or I suppose, dude, there's always the third option. There's always the third option of just not doing anything at all and just sort of letting the chips fall where they may. I mean, out of those three options, what would you consider would be the best phase to go about with as far as it pertains to musicians? And I asked that because of this clip that we have coming up right now. Trump was asked yesterday. All right, so he was touring around a Ford plant. He was asked yesterday, hey, what are you going to do if this hits a second wave? And just try and go ahead and play the full clip here. The answer to that question is at the end of this clip. It's about 2-minute long. So go ahead and play all that, though, Sean.
2.4 million people claiming first-time unemployment insurance benefits today. Yeah. How close are we to the cure being worse than the disease?
I think that a lot of these states are going to, the ones that are sort of sticking to a certain very rigid pattern, I think they're going to stop. I don't think the people are going to stand for it. This is a country that's meant to be open, not closed. And we did the right thing, John. We saved millions of lives, millions and millions of lives. You would have had anywhere from 1.5 million to 2.5 million, 3 million lives. Think of it. So if we were at 100,000, instead of 100,000, multiply that times 15, 20, or 25, it wouldn't have been acceptable. It wouldn't have been sustainable. We couldn't have done it. So we've called it right, and now I want it open. And we're going to open, and if there's a fire, an ember, a flame, someplace we put it out. But the people have done a great job, and General Electric, Ford, and all the other people that work with them have done fantastic work. And Honeywell, again, I was there last week, but Honeywell, they've done fantastically well also. Thank you very much.
Smaller fires, the fires coming up. Are you concerned about a potential second wave of this fire?
People say that's a very distinct possibility. It's standard, and we're going to put out the fires. We're not going to close the country. We're going to put out the fires. There could be, whether it's an ember or a flame, we're going to put it out. But we're not closing our country. There could be, all right, whether it's an ember or a flame, we're going to put it out. But we're not closing.
And look, so you heard it right there. And let me know if I'm turning a little bit behind here, Shine, or something. But you heard it right there from the president himself, right? Whether it's an ember or flame, we're putting it out, but we're not closing our country a second time. How do you all feel about that? And again, okay, let me say this to start with. A simple off-the-cuff statement from President Trump while he's touring a facility somewhere is not going to be indicative of what the law may become. It could. It very well could. I mean, Trump has been known to do lesser things before. He's been known to make bigger claims before. He's also been known to change things like this before through a simple tweet. So it very well could be, which is why I'm taking that statement seriously, at least seriously enough that we should consider it through conversation. If you want this to be part of the call-in segment today, let us know. Call in again. That number is 615-807-0619. You'll see it scrolling at the bottom there in just a minute. 615-807-0619. Just about 10 minutes. We'll open up Open Line Fridays here. But let us know, though. Okay, let me know. In Facebook here, I'll read these comments here in just a second. And Sean, if you find any good ones, just go ahead and interrupt me and let me know. How do you feel about Trump basically coming out and saying, like, look, if we hit a second wave, we're not going to shut this thing down? And I asked that because it is important to couple the fear that we're going through right now with what other countries have already been able to do. Look at South Korea. I think South Korea is a fantastic example of how they've been able to handle this. Now, granted, South Korea goes through something like this arguably every season, or at least every other season, not the COVID-19 stuff in particular, clearly. But in relation in proximity to where they are from China, let me be completely for real about this. This is a very controversial statement, so let me make a hard line of delineation. This is my personal opinion, not on behalf of any organization, not on behalf of any other person, not even on behalf of David Shine Thompson. But because of South Korea's proximity to the country of China, and because a lot of this stuff is coming out of China, let's be completely for real, controversial, but they have to deal with this stuff a lot more than we do. So they get it. They figured it out. There's a reason why Eastern cultures have a tendency to wear face masks all the time, because they understand that it's common courtesy to their fellow man, because they have to deal with a lot of this stuff all the time. It's been ingrained into their society. Americans haven't been able to we don't have to deal with that yet. Right? We have the luxury of not having to deal with that yet. But I'm just saying there is ways that South Korea has been able to do it, to not have to shut down. And just like Trump said, through a arguably somewhat crass analogy, but whatever, if it's an ember or if it's a flame, we'll squash it out. We'll squander it, or we'll squelch that as soon as it comes through. So you could do it that way. Look at Sweden. Sweden's been kind of a good case example. Sweden stayed open, for what I understand, have researched the majority of the time. And their idea behind that was to force herd immunity sooner rather than later. Now, of course, they've had a larger number of deaths than surrounding countries have, for sure. And of course, there are a multitude of variables to consider when we're comparing Sweden to the United States. Population, density of cities, the demographics, age demographics, the comparable nature of multi-generational families that are living on top of each other, all kinds of stuff. I get that. But there's at least a few examples we can cite to when Trump comes out and says, hey, if this happens again, we're not shutting down. Or alternatively, let me ask you, does that scare you? I'm not even necessarily making a point right now. I'm asking, does it scare you? We'll hit Facebook comments right after this. Sean's telling me there's a lot of great ones. Does it scare you? Because look, there is a consideration, an argument to be made. I want to be completely honest here. There is an argument to make that if we didn't do this shutdown period, Trump is still also, the same man is still also telling us that if we didn't do this shutdown, we could be looking at 1.5, 2 million deaths. He said just 2 days ago, if I didn't shut everything down, we could have been looking at 2.5 million deaths. Now, whether that modeling data is accurate, I don't know. It doesn't matter. The comparison I'm drawing is it's the same man making both statements. You follow me there? It's the same guy on one day saying, like, if we didn't shut down, the 100,000 that we're about to have right now could have been 2 million. And he's also saying now, if this comes back again, we're not shutting down a second time because we're going to get it right this time. Where do you stand there, Sean? Hit me with some of those Facebook comments if you want to, man.
Okay, no problem, everybody. Let's see here. Kel Northup says, thank goodness he's at least making that statement. Like saying it, I guess she's saying, who cares if it's not necessarily official. Think at least he's making that statement. Eric says, I don't know. Other countries are already imposing another lockdown. Albert says, how I feel. Closing up only healthy people makes me sick. Daniel Stoden, it's too bad Trump doesn't feel obligated to do anything that he said. That's totally fair. That pretty much covers it. Great job, y'all. And I'll say, too, if you have a real comment, try that call-in. One of y'all call in so we can test it and do the whole live call-in thing. We are here for you, ready for your comments.
Yeah, that number, by the way, you'll see on the screen, obviously 615-807-0619. Let us know. By the way, if someone does call in, there's no screening process here. It's just going to hit straight into my headphones, and I'm the only one that can hear it. So, we'll just bring you on. I'll share the audio with everyone else, and we'll just, see how it works, man. But I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Everyone wants to be cordial, be nice, be respectful. Family program we got going on here. But from the comment section, look, Daniel said in a second ago, Trump is like a speaker hooked up to a room filled with monkeys. A little bit, man. But I wonder how people are going to feel about this if this comes back in the fall and we have to figure out something different. I also wonder if some of the introductions that these businesses are making right now will help calm some of those fears, right? I also wonder if something that Kelly, or one of our fantastic Real News audience members, shared with us right before the start of this show, if that could actually lend some type of hope, it was just a weird word to use here, but lend some kind of hope to what's going on here. Check the Real News section. Obviously, where you're watching this, open up a separate tab if you want to or whatever, or check it out after the show and just take my word for it. But Kelly, actually, I got a call right now. Let me bring this on.
Here, while you're getting them up,
hang on just a second.
Hey, Grant,
here.
While you're getting them up, I'll jump in and give my feedback on what Trump said. I think that he's throwing out there. I think he's throwing out there, and I think I can translate. I've gotten really good at Trump translation. I think it's barring any kind of news that would make him think otherwise, we're not closing again, no matter what happens. Like, obviously if we had hospitals in 3 states that were being overwhelmed and they had to send in the army to build field hospitals and stuff.
We can hear you, Sherry. Sorry, David. I got Sherry on the other line. I can hear. I'm just trying to mess tech with her. It's a live program, buddy. Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. Just you can go ahead and share your audio whenever you're ready, and we can get her on the air.
Oh yeah. Hey, caller online with us right now. Let us know who you are and what your opinion is here.
Hi. The only thing, this is really cool that you guys are taking call-ins. The only thing I was going to say, I was talking to a friend the other day, and they said, when pools open or beaches open and there's no lifeguard, they say swim at your own risk. And so they said, why don't you just, on some of these bars and some of these restaurants, everybody knows. I mean, there's nobody in this country that's not informed about COVID. So why don't they just put big signs out there that say enter and participate at your own risk and let the market decide?
Very interesting. Sean, what do you think about that? That's a little bit up your alley, too. And caller, hang on the line for just a second if you want to give a follow-up as well. That sounds a little bit up your alley, too, of what you were saying yesterday, right?
Yeah, I think I said that yesterday. Yeah. There's plenty of it's not just swimming. There's other parts of our life where we assume that there's inherent risk, but we still let people do them all the time. And there are signs that say, do this at your own risk. Or there is a risk of this, you need to know that, and by participating, you acknowledge that risk, and you can't say no one told you. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, we here in Knoxville, we have like public swimming areas that are naturally formed, not man-made pools. We have what do they call them? We have quarries that people swim in. There's never a lifeguard. There's signs that say swim at your own risk. And to be totally fair, that's more dangerous and kills more people than a lot of things. People drowning or hitting their head and things like that. Why are we okay with letting people go to the quarry and not okay with letting people go to the bar? And it's not like I'm obsessed with people going to bars. It's not like going to bars is the best thing ever. It's just there's people who live off that. That's the economy too. And I'm standing up for that.
Hey, caller, let me ask you real quick before we let you go. Kelly just said in Facebook saying, yep, it's true. Life itself is risky. Caller, let me ask you, will you expect Trump, in your opinion, to hold to the same standard, for lack of a better term, if and when something like this will return in the fall?
I actually don't think it'll be this stiff. I think people realize that it's not, we haven't seen the rates we expected, albeit we were severely shut down. But no, I don't think it'll be as severe. I think they'll say if you're over 65 years old, or if you are dealing with cancer, taking chemotherapy, something like that, takes very, very severe precautions. But outside of that, I don't think so. I really don't. It doesn't bother me at all. But anyway, hey, glad you guys set up the phone.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, there goes the first caller, man. You know, hey, it's a new thing, new wrinkle we're trying out. Call us, give us a call, 615-807-0619. One contingency I didn't necessarily plan for, I don't think. Bob just said in Facebook a second ago that he tried to call, but it was a failure on dial-in.
Yeah, there's
maybe
only
that's
one
because
line.
they're calling one line. Yeah, right.
It's just like when you call the radio station and all 4 lines were full, you're going to get a busy signal. So if you want to call in, you just got to keep on calling.
Hey, and let me make a super awkward transition here by bringing up this next story of kind of something that I want to talk about here at the bottom of the hour so that we can transition into some other calls, because it's the main thing that people were talking about in Facebook a second ago. As obviously we're talking about returning to some sense of normalcy, and the big headline of Trump saying, hey, if this comes back in fall, we're not shutting stuff down again. I mean, that carries its own sort of implications. But I'm also wondering what other stories are getting swept under the rug during a time like this. I'm also wondering what other stories are we not focusing on? What other stuff may be going on around the world? And I don't know, dude. It was such a weird thing that I stumbled across yesterday. Michael Knowles over there at the Daily Wire, he came up with this story, and I suppose, like, I saw a few other sources reporting on it, but it's not your typical run-of-the-mill. It's not your New York Times. It's not your Washington Post, at least that was reporting on it initially. It's not your Fox or CNN. It was the random off the wall, off the beat ones, off the beaten path sort of type things. It was a little bit of the Breitbarts. It was a little bit of the Daily Wires. It was a little bit of the, not second tier necessarily. It's not what I'm saying. It's just not the big players in the game. Big players meaning the traditional sense, the mainstream media word. Sean, if you want to go ahead and pull up that clip there, actually start this, man. Do this. A lot of what Michael Knowles said here should be taken with a grain of salt, but at least the first portion on into about a minute or 2 minutes into it, we'll cut it after this first audio clip. He does a decent job setting this up, though, man. So go ahead and play it from the very beginning of the video there. Yeah. Start from the very beginning, if you will.
Forget for a moment.
And then we'll let it play through that first audio clip of Joe Biden, because he does an okay job setting up what's happening.
The news story.
Go ahead and play that, though.
That everyone's talking about, which is this debate over the coronavirus. Forget for a moment all the mud that Democrats are trying to sling on Trump. Let's just go down and remember that there's a presidential race going on. It is 2020. Joe Biden is the presumptive Democratic nominee. He's being accused not just of the sexual allegations, but of some pretty serious corruption involving his son and the Obama administration and Ukraine. Right? Obviously, no one's covering that. Now we've got leaked audio from Joe Biden speaking to then Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko about this crooked deal where Joe Biden said, you've got to fire the prosecutor, Victor Shokin, looking into my son, and I will give you a $1 billion loan guarantee from the United States. Here's the tape.
Hey, Mr. President, Joe Biden, how are you?
Very well indeed. As usual, when I hear your voice. Thank you very much.
Well, you are doing very well. Congratulations on getting the new prosecutor general. I know there's a lot more that has to be done, but I really think that's good, and I understand you're working with a rod in the coming days on a number of additional laws to secure the IMF. But congratulations on installing the new prosecutor general. It's going to be critical for him to work quickly to repair the damage Shokin did. And I'm a man of my word. And that now that the new prosecutor general is in place, we're ready to move forward in signing that new $1 billion loan guarantee.
Wow.
And pause it right there if you want to, Sean. All right, let me start real quick here. I have this little narrative that I like to pitch to people, especially taking this new job. I have this story, this thought line that went on for a little while. And I'm going to be real honest with the real news audience, man. Towards the end of the FM, doing this show on the FM side, I developed a little bit of political nihilism in the sense that, like, I started to think it didn't matter. And it might not matter still, but at least then when I was thinking it just didn't matter who was in charge. If it was Democrat, Republican, it didn't matter if I was reading a headline from CNN or Fox News. Like, honestly, the results seemed the same. And I'm going off a little bit of a rant here, and I'm going to get back to the topic at hand, I promise. Give us a call. Let us know your opinions on this very topic right now if you want to. But I promise you, I started to get the point, like, stories like this, man, got me so infuriated. We just impeached a dude for this same thing. The standards, the consistency of both sides' inconsistency, the just abuse of power. And it was abuse of power that we impeached a guy for. Now, sure, he was acquitted in the Senate, but all this stuff started circulating around in my head about a year back. And I started like, dude, what is happening? Am I just spewing dogma on a microphone? Am I just pontificating to nobody out here? Am I actually doing enough to make a difference? And yes, Shine and I do this program on our own time. We do this because we love this community, because we want to build this community, because we love hearing from y'all, because I genuinely do think we're growing and helping each other. And I genuinely believe that the time for a third-party option might be coming. I honestly do. But that's part of the reason why I came to work for this company, Americans for Prosperity. And I'm not making this an AFP pitch, I promise. I'm just saying, when we come on here from time to time and start pitching company things at y'all, it's because I genuinely believe in that company motto of uniting with anyone to do right and no one to do wrong. These are the type of stories that get me there, man. I'm telling you, dude. Someone from Facebook tell me I'm wrong. Someone from YouTube tell me I'm wrong right now. When you're looking at exactly what just happened with Joe Biden. What just happened with Joe Biden is almost the exact same scenario with slight difference in details that we just impeached a president for abuse of power for. Now, you might say, Mr. Henry, well, hold on. Trump was doing that to influence an election. Was he? Because we never got to that question. We never got anywhere close to that question, at least in the impeachment process. Now, I might follow you if you want to have a conversation about that. That's fine. We can have a conversation all day long about the reasons why Trump, backtrack 2 seconds. If you don't know what I'm talking about, goodness, I got to stop using that term. Shine told me to do that from the very beginning. From the very beginning, we didn't impeach Trump. House Republicans impeached Trump. Goodness gracious. House Democrats impeached Trump. Not we. They impeached Trump, though, for abuse of power, for basically going to Ukraine and saying, hey, Ukraine, if you come out and publicly state that you're investigating Joe Biden for this Burisma deal. Joe Biden's son had a nefarious little deal going on that Ukrainian had done some backing with. The details aren't important. What's important is that the story is that there was a phone call between the president of Trump and the president of Ukraine. And the president of Ukraine said, hey, if we come out and admit that we're investigating Joe Biden, you said that you're going to give us some military aid, some funding. That was the exchange. And House Democrats never got to the point of asking the motivation question, the crucial motivation question of why were you doing that? Now, someone might say, like, on its face, it's clear, prima facie, Mr. Henry. It's obvious the only reason he was doing that was to influence the election. That's the only guy that it's virtually certain that guy is going to be the presidential nominee. That's who he's running against. Why else would he do this? I don't know, dude, because of the call you just heard. Because if it is true that Joe Biden guaranteed $1 billion to remove a prosecutor that was just so happened to be prosecuting his son, maybe there was a sense of legitimacy for Trump to be looking into that. You call it national security or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't even matter. The point I'm making is the House Democrats never even brought that question up. They never asked the motivation question. No one even ever asked why, formally, under oath. No one brought a charge that formally asserted the motivating element. Why did you do that? They just said you did that, and because you did that, it was an abuse of power. So this is the point that I'm making. If it was an abuse of power for Trump now, how in the world was it not an abuse of power for Biden then? It's the exact same quid pro quo exchange. Do something for me, and I'll give you money. For Biden, it was get rid of this prosecutor, and I'll give you $1 billion. For Trump, it was announce an investigation into Joe Biden, and I'll give you money. Now, we can have a conversation about that motivating factors, and maybe that's where the truth lies, and maybe that's what we should focus on. And it's not just the Biden exchange. Sean, go ahead and play the remaining clip there, starting at minute 240 there. This is coming from President Poroshenko on his end as well. Go ahead and play that.
Joe Biden mentioned.
The second thing is that I want to thank you that you give me your word that immediately when we change the legislation and I appoint the new prosecutor general, and it would be Yuri Lutsenko, as we agreed on our previous meeting in Washington, and when it happened, we can have this loan guarantee, and thank you.
Why is Joe Biden?
Honestly, it's the one thing that if you listen to this whole clip, by the way, I would advise you take what Michael Knowles is saying with a grain of salt. He just did some good editing cut up there. I just wanted to include that portion. Michael Knowles takes some severe liberties with his analysis. Joe Biden clearly never mentioned anything about his son. He clearly never mentioned the motivating factor behind what his quid pro quo was. quid pro quo. I'm sure people are following along, but it's like a this for that, a tit for tat in exchange for something. He never mentioned anything about that. But you heard the Ukrainian president at the time also mention, it was like, dude, it's like, it's almost too perfect to be true type stuff, right? Like it's some Hollywood scriptwriter out there put the proposal together and said, well, if we were to, like to see Joe Biden basically do the same thing that we just impeached President Trump for, what would that character say? Well, he might say, well, that's exactly what just happened. And the president responding, well, I like that you said, if we do such and such, you'll give us $1 billion and that you're a man of your word. And what's the Democrats' response to this, by the way, at this whole revelation? It's essentially what I said before. Well, it's okay for our guy. This is the other side of the story that people aren't noticing yet, and the Washington Post picks up on this. It's okay for our guy because everybody wanted that prosecutor gone. It doesn't matter that the prosecutor might have been looking into Joe Biden's son. That's a motivating factor that isn't even relevant. It only matters that it was okay to get rid of him that time because the rest of Ukraine thought that prosecutor was corrupt. Are you kidding me right now? Listen to what the Washington Post says about this. Here's the headline. Why the latest revelations on Biden and Ukraine are a gigantic nothing burger. Now, this whole audio leaked on Tuesday. I'm just now picking up on it. A Ukrainian lawmaker held a news conference in the city of Kiev claiming to have damning evidence on Joe Biden misusing $1 billion in American taxpayer dollars. As proof, he played the audio clip that we just played for you a second ago. And the Washington Post says that U.S. conservatives took the cue and launched a wave of attacks on the former vice president. Yet, their efforts to stir up a full-fledged campaign over the allegations never really got off the ground. The likely reason, they say, well, the recordings didn't live up to their billing. He goes on to say that this guy is a member of Ukrainian parliament, said that they showed Biden making U.S. financial assistance to the Ukrainian contingent on allowing the corruption schemes of Ukrainian gas company to Burisma to continue. Now, if this were true, it would confirm a right-wing conspiracy, the Washington Post says. But they go on to say that in the recordings, Biden tells Poroshenko that the United States will withhold aid to Ukraine and if it replaces its prosecutor general. Now, here's the important part. And China, if you could find this for me, right in that paragraph I just mentioned, this is the most important part for me. For a U.S. official to make such a demand from a country with a well-established rule of law would normally constitute a serious breach of diplomatic protocol. For a U.S. official to make such a demand from a country with a well-established rule of law would normally constitute a serious breach of diplomatic protocol. Okay. All right. But Ukraine, which has been crippled by entrenched corruption almost from its birth as an independent state in 1991, doesn't fall into that category. Or so says Washington Post. Both Americans and Europeans have spent years trying to push Kiev into combat malfeasance, including the firing of corrupt officials. At the time Biden and Poroshenko spoke, Ukrainian activists were taking to the streets to accuse the prosecutor general of neglecting his duty to prosecute corrupt officials and business figures. So basically, the Washington Post is saying, well, look, yeah, okay. Yeah, it was an abuse of power and Biden is doing it, but it was totally justified because everyone wanted that corrupt prosecutor out of there. We all knew he was corrupt. Dude, are you kidding me right now? I feel like I'm losing my mind. Give me a call right now, 615-807-0619, 615-807-0619. If you want to make your opinion heard on this, this is what I'd like Open Line Fridays to be about, but it is Open Line Fridays. Any other random topic y'all want to bring up, if you want to jump off this one, by all means, let's jump off this one. But I'm telling you, man, this type of stuff infuriates me to no end. This type of stuff is causing me to make like career moves here, y'all. This type of stuff is causing me to look for ways to have a bigger impact on my community because this type of stuff just doesn't make sense anymore. The Washington Post coming out and voluntarily admitting that, yeah, it's illegal. It violates all norms of diplomatic protocol. But it was okay because we all agreed that the prosecutor was corrupt, right? So he should have been gone. And we don't even get to a motivating factor, man. We don't even get to ask that second question. And it just doesn't matter, dude. I'm not pushing for third parties necessarily. I'm just saying this duopoly, it's getting a bit too much to handle, man. I'll tell you something else getting a bit too much to handle, dude, is just like, you can't say anything about China's influence in this country anymore. Like if you bring it up at all, like I'm even feeling myself sort of like cringe a little bit as I'm saying this. Is that Mr. Henry, you going to introduce something controversial? No, dude, I'm like the least controversial thing.
Winnie the Pooh will come for you, Mr. Henry. You watch out, man. That he will treat you like a big jar of honey and eat you up, man.
Let us know how you feel. Real News Radio, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, any of that stuff. Let us know in the comments section. Give us a call, 615-807-0619, open line Fridays. Let us know how you feel. But Ted Cruz, Senator Cruz, I apologize. He comes out and explains how Hollywood capitulates to China's censorship. 1.5, 2 minute little rant here. Breitbart put together. Sean, if you got that ready, go ahead and play that clip for him.
In the United States, the Chinese government attempts to spread pop propaganda by two ways: by leveraging their enormous market access to coerce Americans into self-censorship, especially to Hollywood and sports teams who stand to make billions of dollars in China, and by simply purchasing access to our cultural and educational centers. With both levers, Chinese officials have one objective: to shape what Americans see, hear, and ultimately think. China has the world's second largest film market, second only to the United States, and it does around $8 billion in box office revenues per year. The Chinese film market is comprised of Chinese films, but they also make sure to allow a few dozen American films into their market every year. The number is deliberately kept low, and in exchange for access, American film companies submit their films to China's censors, who often force them to change those films. American companies have learned this fact, and they'll often change the films even in advance of submitting. As a result, they control not just what audiences see in China, but also what Americans see. The Chinese government censorship office seeks to edit anything to do with Tibet, with Taiwan, with Tiananmen Square, with human rights, with democracy, with religion, or with any criticism of communism, particularly the Chinese Communist Party. Recently, the Chinese government has succeeded in forcing changes to movies such as Top Gun, the sequel, such as Doctor Strange, such as Skyfall, such as the remake of Red Dawn. Pixels, Looper, Bohemian Rhapsody, all are movies that were changed. In Bohemian Rhapsody, the Chinese Communist Party edited out references to the fact that Freddie Mercury was gay. In Doctor Strange, they changed the Ancient One's character from Tibetan, as portrayed in the comic book, to Celtic. And in the Top Gun sequel that's set to come out later this year, the Taiwanese and Japanese flags on the back of Maverick's jacket were removed to appease the Chinese Communist Party. Think about that for a second. What message does it send that Maverick, an American icon, is apparently afraid of the Chinese communists?
All right, now, like some might say, we went a little bit too far in the last reference. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's Ted Cruz or not.
No, I think it's stupid. I don't think he went far enough. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like stories. Here, let me get me some in the shot here. But I like stories, and I like the original Red Dawn. And I was really excited about the Red Dawn remake because the original Red Dawn, you know, by the way, like, go Wolverines. Like, that's one of the best. Like, you want to get excited about being an American, watch Red Dawn. That movie is awesome. An incredible movie. And the idea in the remake that North Korea was the one sending an army across the ocean and being able to have supply lines that go from the middle of the United States all the way back to North Korea is stupid. That's not a real story. No one believes North Korea could attack the United States and have supply lines going all the way to Ohio. Nobody believes that. Now, a much more believable story and a lot more fun is China doing it, because that's believable, because you have to be able to spend. Right. But I think he could have gone on that more than the Maverick thing. I mean, obviously the Maverick. I mean, it's like obvious, like the character Maverick would be scared of communists. That's crazy.
Yeah. Eric said in Facebook a second ago, I was going on this rant previously. If you just joined us, by the way, I was going on this rant about Joe Biden having an audio clip come out that's implicating him and doing essentially the exact same thing that we just impeached Trump for. I'm tying this to the China story in a second. Give me a minute here. But Eric just said, I said, I'm not necessarily advocating for a third party. I'm just saying that the current duopoly we have is extremely problematic. And Eric said, so push for a third party then. Dude, I wish I could. I genuinely wish I could, but I don't know which one to push for. And tying it to this China situation, I'm starting to think that there might possibly, fingers crossed, possibly be a better option than parties in general. This China situation, dude, I don't know if it's going to solve itself by way of government. I do think it could possibly solve itself by 325 plus million Americans being socially conscious and aware of how they're spending their money. I don't know, dude. If you don't like the fact that there's iPhones being made in suicide sweatshops in China somewhere, don't buy an iPhone. If you don't like the fact that the Houston Rockets are literally bending the knee, I mean, literally in some sense and figuratively in others, bending the knee to the China market because it doubles, if not triples, the NBA revenue than even what America brings in, don't watch an NBA game. Certainly don't buy a jersey. All I'm saying is, and I'm not, this is, Eric is saying, then support a third party. Dude, I'd love to support a third party. And I'm getting even a little bit more controversial with this. When we bring up stories about Joe Biden having audio tapes of doing, I'm talking the exact same thing that we just impeached President Trump for abuse of power. I don't know if I can take a Libertarian Party seriously to even be serious about themselves. And this is a big internal struggle for me right now, but I've been following a lot of the libertarian change over the last couple of weeks here, dude. Like, they can't even figure out whether they want to push a party philosophy to hopefully bring more people into the movement or get people to win elections. And if the Libertarian Party itself, and I'm not speaking as a libertarian, man. I'm a little libertarian philosophy leanings, but I would have to consider myself a Republican as far as this considered a party member, because I don't know what the Libertarian Party is. And I think Eric gets that too. I think Eric might even be referencing to, like, he might consider himself libertarian, but he also has to understand, like, I don't know what the party means, dude. The party itself doesn't know what it means. These people are arguing every single day with, like, we shouldn't really be too worried, concerned about winning elections. Well, they don't call yourself a party, as far as I'm concerned. That's my opinion. And I probably have no room to speak on this, man. I get that because I'm not a party member. I don't pay dues. So why should I listen to you anyways? Fine, I get that. But if you're not going to consider yourself a party to win elections, then what are you doing, man? Are you just up there to use the platform to spread out some ideology? Go have an awesome podcast. Get on Joe Rogan, dude. There's a lot of ways to spread your message around. I feel like we're doing it right now. But when it comes down to something like what Ted Cruz just went on, I don't even see how that should be a partisan thing. I don't see how what Ted Cruz just went through should be a Democrat or Republican thing, but it has become one. I think. Maybe, I don't know. It's always difficult for me to figure out where the South Park writers actually fall sometimes politically. I don't pretend to necessarily understand that. I would like to think they're equal opportunity offenders. But that last couple seasons where they were hitting China hard. They were hitting China hard. It was a little bit too late, granted, but they hit him hard when nobody else was. And just straight up letting you know what's going on. Like, when Ted Cruz says that Hollywood scriptwriters have to get it approved by China, totally true. 100% true. And that's just the tip of the iceberg here, man. Like, the Hollywood influence is just the tip of the iceberg. So if you understand the tentacle reach that China has into influencing the way that they are perceived, their culture is perceived, their perception that Americans have of that country, you could start to see now the formulation of the idea behind what the WHO is, behind how Americans perceive, I don't know, whether they should have any guilt at all in this coronavirus stuff going on. And then you can start to understand and follow the trains that started as conspiracy theory talk, but now it's not so much anymore. It's like, all right, dude, so how do they control that much of China? Dude, they own a lot of Hollywood. They own a sizable portion of these production studios. They are Sony. Let's be honest about that. There is no such thing as Huawei, by the way. It's just the Chinese government. They own a sizable portion. I'm talking ownership stakes of a sizable portion of this stuff. So if you're CEO, if my boss comes to me and says, Grant, you got to shut down this podcast because I don't want you doing it. If you're doing it under the name of Americans for Prosperity, I don't want you doing this anymore. Well, I got to listen to him, don't I? I can do it on my own time, sure, but I certainly can't do it under their banner anymore. That's what's happening with the China influence right now, man. So when it comes down to this, it's not just a Hollywood influence. It's the expansion of 5G technology. It's moving around military bases. I mean, it's a Cold War heating up in the South China Sea. It's way bigger than just Hollywood stuff going on right now. And I think this is a little bit of what Trump has been tapping into since 4 years back. China. You want to know what you remember about China so much? One more time, I hope one day to be able to advocate for a legitimate third-party option. I hope one day to be able to advocate for someone even within the Republican Party that actually represents my ideals. I haven't quite found them yet. I've found a few. I like Massey. Frankly, I really like Amash. I love Amash. I like Paul's out there. Paul's, P-A-U-L, Paul's, Ran and Ron. I like some folks that are doing it. They're at least trying to draw attention to some of this stuff, man. But I think, much like Shine is trying to do with this community here in Knoxville, I think the better option sometimes is to let the community solve it for itself. Get beyond politics, man, which is a weird thing for me to say. Talking about, hey, I may want to run for office one day, right? That's a weird thing for me to say of not even worrying about politicians, dude. But the American people are bigger than its representatives. They always have been. Now, this story here, we're seeing Cold War heating up in the South China Sea. No worries. Yeah, it's China war heating up in the South China Sea. China wrongly claims most of its territorial seas. What does that mean? This author says that he spent most of his seagoing career in the Pacific and sailed many times through the humid waters of the South China Sea. It's a big body of water, the size of the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico combined. Now, the sea bottom is full of oil and natural gas. Nearly 40% of the world's international shipping passes through that. Nearly 40% of the world's international shipping passes through the South China Sea. Now, China wrongly claims that most of the South China Sea is its territorial sea. And as relations between the U.S. and China continue to deteriorate into, coronavirus finger pointing, like we've seen before, this is why types of this story are so important, because we're talking about international shipping lanes that are deteriorating, that the relations are fraying because of the perception that the rest of the world has on China. And the way that China is trying to influence our perception through the media coverage of that story. And the bigger part of this, dude, is as they're trying to influence those stories, they're doing terrible things that are costing actual human lives. Yeah, fear-mongering a little bit. Granted, I hear you. But you can't sit here and tell me that not a single life was lost due to the inaction of WHO. That would be nonsensical. Continuing. And as the relations between the U.S. and China continue to deteriorate into coronavirus finger-pointing and election year posturing, the chances for a conflict in those waters are rising. In recent weeks, several U.S. warships, including a destroyer that this author commanded in the early 1990s, the Barry is what that destroyer is called, have been confronted by Chinese while conducting patrols. Why has this body of water become such a flashpoint, and what can be done to avoid an incident that could set off something bigger? Now, he goes on to talk about how, the historical underpinnings go back, a couple years and yada, yada. And he says that the key for the U.S. is to gradually bend China's behavior without breaking the international relationship in a way that leads into a Cold War or armed conflict. The best way to do that is to bring more international allies into the freedom of navigation patrols, including NATO, Australia, and Japan, increase U.S. engagement with Taiwan, particularly in military-to-military cooperation, insist on full-blown international investigation into the Wuhan outbreak of the coronavirus, and build stronger relations with other nations around the South China Sea. And a lot of that to me, buddy, I'm not going to lie, as we're getting close to ending the show, one more time, 615-807-0619. That number you should see scrolling across the screen right there. Give me a call. Let me know any of the opinions you have in the stories today. A lot of what I just read right there, though, sounds a little bit like a pitch for more military involvement. I don't know, man. I'm really not trying to be that pessimistic about it. I promise you I'm not. I don't see any other way of seeing this. I just don't. Right? And I say that because everybody else is going to be vulnerable after this coronavirus stuff. Really, once we really see the economic impact of what's about to happen here, America is going to be hurting, but the rest of the world is going to be crawling, right? We're going to be struggling, but the rest of the world economy is going to be crippled. And we don't even know the actual numbers that are coming out of China and Russia, but I can pretty much guarantee you that it's substantially worse than ours, if not at least as bad as ours for sure. But knowing as little as I do about economics, I can tell you it's probably much, much worse. And through that vulnerability creates power vacuums and voids. And as those power vacuums and voids end up, coming to bubble up to the surface, somebody has to fill that. And as the conversation starts to take place about somebody feeling that, there is a multitude of justifications for us to take, not advantage of necessarily, not take advantage of, that's not what I'm saying, but there are a multitude of justifications for us to say China is wrong, China is bad, China is the new red. Therefore, we should have military intervention. Therefore, we should have military involvement. Therefore, we should take back the South China Sea. Look what they're doing to Hollywood. Look what they're doing to our trade relations. Look what they're doing to our proprietary information. And I'm telling you right now, no, please, no, none of it, man. None of it. And one last time, man, for all of our libertarian buddies out there, as we're ending the show today, I hope I'm not frustrating you too much. I promise you, I hope that. Just about a year back, I went through this very cathartic experience of starting to realize, like, I'm not seeing a lot of difference between Republicans and Democrats sometimes, man. And it's frustrating me to my core. Like, I feel like there's a bit of a calling for a lot of people to just get something done finally, to make a difference finally, to make a move, to make a change, to influence your fellow man, to convince him that something should be done because it's the right thing to do, not because you coerced him, not because you forced him, not because you passed some law to do so. And all I'm saying about my libertarian brothers and sisters is just like, unfortunately, there's still a part of me that believes in constitutional incrementalism, that believes the way you get some of that back is by influence the system that we currently have. Sort of taking it down from the inside, but that's going to mean you have to play the game. I know that's terrible to say, but you got to play the game separately. And when Joe Biden comes out and does the same thing as Donald Trump, when we impeach one guy, not the other, it's just like, I can't be the only one that sees it this way, right? Hey, man, it's Friday, though. Shine, we're signing off today. Shine's got a moving thing to do. Wish him some luck today. Everyone have a fantastic weekend, by the way. We will be back doing a big on Real News, I believe, on Monday as well. Hit us up in the comments section, personal notes, anything else like that you want us to do. Love all y'all. My name is Mr. Henry, David Shine Thompson. We're signing off for the weekend. See you on Monday.